Theo, hey Jim, Susan.
Hello.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Susan. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
How's it going?
Oops.
Evening. I'm just trying to finish some dinner. So
I like that. I like that picture. Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
I made it in time to my son's Little League game at Nacella to watch. I got like 4 innings and then I rushed over here back.
All right. Thanks for splitting the time. It's it'd be hard to pull away from youth sports. So,
Yeah, they were down. Well, 5-1, 5-2. Sure, okay.
all right. All right. I'm a sucker and a glutton for that stuff.
Well, the better game was yesterday out in Waltham. The varsity lacrosse women's team playing Waltham, and they had to get a win to clinch a tournament berth, and they won 8-7. It was a really good game.
Awesome. Oh, that's great.
Yep.
Did the boys clinch yet?
I don't know. I don't have. I
Yeah,
haven't been following too much. I think they did win yesterday.
I thought they had to win 2 out of 4.
Hmm.
My paper's downstairs. I can run and get it.
That's all right.
Item not anticipated by the chair.
All right, I'm gonna read this. Truthfully, I don't know if any other board reads this, but I do. Consistent with the governor's orders extending certain provisions of the open meeting law, every effort will be made to allow the public to view and or listen to the meeting in real time. Persons who wish to do so are invited to click on the provided link. If you do not have a camera or a microphone on your computer, you may use provided dial-in number and password. Please only use dial-in or computer and not both, as audio feedback will distort the meeting. This meeting will be audio and video recorded in compliance with the Americans with Disability Act. This location is accessible to people with disabilities. Wakefield provides reasonable accommodations and or language assistance free of charge upon request. If you are a person with a disability and require information or materials in an alternate format, or you require any other accommodation, please contact the town's disability coordinator, William Renault, town engineer, at 781-246-6308 as far in advance of the event as possible. Every effort will be made to grant your request. Advance notification will enable the town to make reasonable accommodations to remove an accessibility barrier for you. To claim the host.
Pat, can you make me the co-host just in case?
I'll consider it.
Thanks.
You're the co-host. All right, I'm going to call to order the May 24th, 2022 regular planning board meeting. Roll call vote. Bill Spalding,
Here.
Jim Hogan,
Here.
Megan Menasali,
Here.
Theo Knoll,
Here.
and I'm here, Matthew Lowry. And also attending is Susan Odd, our secretary or clerk. All right. Item number 2, approval of meeting minutes from May 10th, 2022. Has everyone had a chance to read the meeting minutes? And does anyone have any comments or questions on them? All right, do I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes of May 10th, 2022?
Matt, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second,
Uh, Motion by Theo, second by Bill Spalding. Roll call vote. Jim Hogan,
Yes.
Megan Menasali,
Yes.
Bill Spalding,
yes.
Theo Knoll,
Yes,
and myself, yes. All right. Item number 3, board elections of chair and vice chair. We do this every year as a reorganization, just gives everyone a chance, if they so desire, to take the reins. I also believe it's good to change things up every once in a while. Different perspective on how meetings are run and how we see things is always good. So does anyone have a nomination for chair? Bill?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Mr. Theo Knoll as chair.
All right. Do I hear a second?
Second.
that's a ringing endorsement. Come on now, folks.
All right.
Um,
Megan?
I nominate Matthew Lowry for chair.
Well, I think the way it works is we have a nomination on the floor, so we need to take a vote on that. So if Theo does not get enough votes, then we have a second nomination. So, all right,
Wait,
it's been
Before-
nominated for Theo for chair and seconded by Jim. Roll call vote.
is there any opportunity for discussion, or you want to discuss afterwards? So,
Well,
You can discuss it.
okay.
I'd like to make a pitch for Theo since I nominated him, meaning his time on the board has really been helpful to me to learn a little bit more about housing, and I know his history. And I like that he's volunteered for a lot of different sub boards and is part of the master plan advisory where he's our liaison from the planning board. So I like that type of initiative. And I think he has a nice voice of reason, meaning he would do a good job as a chair, helping to move our meetings along and make sure we hit all the agenda points.
Theo, do you want the nomination? Let's put it that way.
I certainly appreciate it. I'm sort of, I appreciate the need to share the labor and to do that. I don't necessarily want to take it from anybody else. And I'm also happy considering being the vice chair. I'm feeling flexible. Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it if others are not interested or feel like they don't have the time. So
Would you be more comfortable as vice chair to start off or chair? I mean, I don't want to force anyone. No
Yeah.
one's forcing anyone to do anything here they don't want to. So, how you feel about this is more important than anyone else. So.
I appreciate so I'm interested in doing it. It's a great learning opportunity. And it just requires a little bit of juggling this fall for me, but certainly doable. So the short answer is I would defer if someone else had a burning desire for it. So, but happy to do it.
Well, I think the way this works is
Sure.
We'll need to take a vote on who's been nominated now.
Okay. All right. Well, I will try to be more convincing to my peers. I appreciate Bill's comments, and I appreciate all of your patience and consideration over the past year. So I'm happy to be considered for chair.
Okay. All right, roll call vote for Theo as chair. Megan Menasali,
Yes.
That's nice.
let's see, Jim Hogan,
Yes.
Bill Spalding,
Yes.
Matthew Lowry, myself, yes. And Theo,
Yes.
all right, it's unanimous.
All right.
Just so you know, I would always vote against myself just for plausible deniability. If anything went wrong, I could say I didn't vote for the guy, but that's just
Very good.
my thing.
Yeah.
So
You could have voted against me too. That would have been a good deniability too.
yes, no, I'm more than happy to
That's
not be the
baton.
chair anymore. So,
Yeah.
all right, do I hear a nomination for vice chair?
Sorry if I could interject. Should we see if there's any other nominations for chair?
Um,
I didn't know nominations were closed for chair. I just wanted to make sure that
Mhm.
that was done correctly.
I believe the procedure is that once someone's nominated, you take a vote, and if it fails, then you have another nomination. So,
Okay,
so since Theo is unanimous, he will be the chair. So,
Matt, you're smirking.
Jim,
Before we nominate someone else, do we want to have discussion in terms of who's actually interested in being vice chair? Before we nominate someone, have to take a vote on it.
Well, you
sure.
can always politely decline.
That's true.
So, okay, discussion on who would like to be vice chair.
So I would throw my hat in the ring into being a vice chair. I think it's something I'm interested in learning more about the position, and I think that the being on the board in the time that I've been on it, I think that I'm starting to get a better sense of how everything works. But I think that it's a position that I would be interested in serving on if I had the support of the other members of the board.
You'll definitely have my support. Everyone,
Mhm.
you know, chair, vice chair, I will support everyone. I've done them all before, and
Mhm.
I know sometimes it gets a little, I'm not going to say overwhelming. We're not that busy, but keeping track of things is, you'll need some guidance, and we'll definitely give it to you. So,
also being ready to jump in case the chair is not available.
yeah.
Right.
So, all right. So, do I hear a nomination? Or actually, I will make a nomination for Jim to be vice chair. Do I hear a second?
So I'll second that.
All right. All right, roll call vote. Theo Knoll,
Yes.
Megan Menasali,
Yes.
Bill Spalding,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Jim Hogan,
Yes, as tempted as I am to follow Matt's lead to say no.
all right. We may regret it someday, but oh well.
Right.
All right, so at this point, Theo, are you ready to take over, or would you like me to close out the evening?
I'm happy to take over. I don't necessarily know all of the Zoom ins and outs, but happy to do it. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So I am going to change to make you the host. So you're the host now.
okay.
And we've done items 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you'll start over on item 3. You'll start on item 4.
Sure. All right. And is Bill still the co-host?
I am.
All right.
It's more just in case
Okay.
you can keep running the meeting. If somebody jumps in and they're not muted, I can quickly mute them. If
Okay.
something happens and you lose your connection, the meeting doesn't end.
Yeah. Fair.
That's
Fair
maybe the
enough.
most important one.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah,
So
it's good keeping Bill co-host because he's pretty familiar with Zoom and can jump in and mute people or, you know,
Mute the
so
chair.
pretty
you mean.
quickly. So
Right. All right, excellent. Well, welcome to May 2024, 2022, and our next term. Item 4, discussion procedures for changing street names. We've had some good discussions, and I gotta pull up my folder. Is there any new draft of the form before us, or?
I don't have a new draft of the form, but I do have a reorganization of the Excel spreadsheet. And I apologize for not sending it out. I actually worked on it last night after the Celtics took a commanding lead. I can share that on my screen if you'd like, or would you like to go over the form first? I have both.
Let's start with the spreadsheet. I think that makes sense.
Okay. Let me share that. A minute. Jim has his hand up, Theo.
Yeah, Jim.
Before we hop into the Excel spreadsheet, does it make sense to review the feedback from Aaron related to the Mass General laws that
Yep.
are applicable to this specific topic? My understanding is that there's some specific procedures that are outlined in general law that may impact the process that we're outlining it right now.
And I do have that section from town council in the spreadsheet, if that's what you were referring to. Let me see if this comment right here. Street number is typically handled through a bylaw, but there is a statutory procedure for street naming under general law, section 85 of chapter 85, section 3A, 3B. Basically, the board in charge of public ways in Wakefield, the town council, can vote to change the name of any public way subject to a right of appeal to the Mass Highway Department if the old name was in use for at least 25 years. Private ways are named in the first instance by the planning board. The planning board may also, after a public hearing, change such a name if it is the same as that of another way or confusingly similar. And that was from Tom Mullen, Town Council. Jim, that's what you were referring to, correct? Good, okay. I think that is a good place to start.
Yeah, that's a very good place. Does Tom Mullen's comment mean refer to just the planning board and private ways, or the planning board and public ways if a public way is confusing? I get a little linear.
Good question. It does say basically the board is in charge of public ways, can vote to change the name of any public way. And that says basically the board in charge, which is in Wakefield, the town council. So can change any public way. Private ways are named in the first instance by the planning board. So it's like public ways versus private ways, which I don't think we've discussed in that level of detail. I don't think we've separated them.
No, I agree. I assumed that like the name changes would apply equally to either. So.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
This to me says that the town council would vote to change the name for a public, and we would vote to change the name for a private, but that doesn't speak to the actual application to change said name, correct?
It does not.
Yeah.
So we're not stating here, right, that like town council has to determine the name, right? We're still gonna have this application if someone deems that they'd like to name a street, and then the town council would vote to approve or not approve if it was a public way, and we would vote to approve or not approve if it was a private way. Is that like a correct assumption in this note?
I think it would be as long as there's a procedure in place. If there's no procedure in place, then I think the town council can kind of go at their whim. So, so I think putting a procedure in place at least forces some procedural thing other than just, oh, we want to change the name. So that's what I think. And then if someone like what has happened, someone is basically petitioning to change the name of a street, I guess the town council could just say, yes, we'll do it. Again, since there's no procedure in place, I don't know what checks and balances there are for that.
Okay, thank you.
But a lot of these sound like questions for Tom Mullen, perhaps clarifying.
But right, I think sort of I think Megan's right? We're still setting the process, and whether or not we get to vote on the name of a public way, we would perhaps be the collating agents, the collating board, and say, all right, we've gone through this process. It's now going to town council.
Which was the way we were trending previously anyway. We were trending towards submitting an application to town council with a recommendation for either favorable or unfavorable action, similar to the citizen's position to a town meeting, right? We're not actually voting on it per se. We're just voting on whether to recommend to the actual governing body what action to take with it.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, it sounds like we're on the right track, right? And
Yes.
And
From our last meeting too, these were the notes when I updated, and I went through the video just to make sure from our previous meeting when we did discuss this. And it seems like this is the order that, and I could be wrong, so this is where I could use some feedback. The first step was Wakefield Fire Department. Just before somebody presents an application form, if they're just saying, I'd like to change this street or private way name, public or private, it seems like it goes in front of, the first step is the fire chief needs to look at it for a yay or nay moving forward. Right? Because is that correct? Sign off on application before submitting to the town clerk.
I think he should have the first veto power right from the start. And if
Right.
it's just way too confusing, he's going to say, no, it's way too confusing. And
Yep.
that's the end of it. So
I agree. And that's great. I mean, those video recordings help so much looking back. The application process, right, to the town clerk, we agreed on that. And we also started to talk about different pieces of this, meaning, should it be certified mail? Meaning each person that would be affected by this street name change. And we talked about a couple of different scenarios that could play out under this to complete the application form, meaning before it goes to the town clerk.
I think, as I recall, the biggest thing that we were talking about, and I don't recall if we had a full consensus, was related to the signatures of the different parties who are on that street. I think there was a conversation as it relates to, if there's this minimum threshold, it would have to be 100%. If it was 10 abutters, for example, or if it was above that threshold, what is the appropriate threshold? And we were talking about 100%. Then there was a concern as it relates to if 100% you're inviting, one holdout that might withhold the approval of this or going through the process for, something that might be overwhelmingly positive or the feedback of it. So I think we need to kind of figure out if we think that, I think we all seem to agree that the consensus majority wasn't necessarily enough, that there need to be either a majority or supermajority of some sort, establishing that, and then establishing if there is a minimum threshold where it triggers up to 100% for the abutters. But beyond that, everything you're saying is consistent with my recollection, Bill.
Okay. So this might be, I'll choose a different color. Nope, that's not what I want to do. this might be the item that is something to review, because if the Mass General Law is saying that if it's a public way, it does need to go to town council. That changes the way this this application needs to read. Like, once the application is accepted by the town clerk and reviewed, if it's a public way, it sounds like it needs to go to town council for review and approval versus going to the planning board for a private way. Right. That's, I think, where we need to. Right. I know I'm not finishing sentences. I didn't finish my dinner either. Okay. That's not in the right place.
Yeah.
Right there. Okay.
So it would seem that, the town clerk is able to review and approve that the application is complete. It would come to us. We would perhaps verify it or confirm it. And if it's a public way, say this goes to town council. If it's a private way, then we would take a vote. That makes sense.
I agree. And I think this has come up too. I think my biggest concern is that the person who's signing that lives on the street might not understand the full
Yeah.
or the amount of work that it's going to take if they have everything in their address. Well, whatever has their address, excuse me, on it will change. So that's the part that I'm most concerned about.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good time to go into the form.
Well, just looking at the actual Mass General Law, it does say that notice of the filing of such petition shall forthwith be filed by the department in the office of the clerk of the town in which the change has been made. And upon filing of such petition, a public hearing shall be given by said department. So either the town council is going to have a public hearing or they will designate someone to do that. So, which normally would, if they designate someone, it's normally us anyways. So I think it still fits in with the procedure that's outlined.
Okay. And that designation, Matt, is it your understanding that they would push it to our board because we would hold the public hearing?
Yeah, for the
Right.
most part, the town council prefers not to have too many public hearings. So
I like the way that would play out.
Okay. Before form, do we want to talk about the majority for a big street versus a small street? 10 or less.
I personally advocate that if you have 10 residents or less, 100% signing before it passes. And then if it's above 10%, or if it's above 10 units or residents on that street, I'd advocate for 75% of the households as a clean threshold.
Yeah.
How should this be worded? Is abutters the correct word? And I guess, Matt, I'm thinking of your vocabulary in this matter. should it be property owners? Or should it be abutters? Because if there's a, say, a two-family rental, the people there sign it, the property owner doesn't know. Just a thought.
It seems like it would be anyone who has frontage on that roadway. So if you have frontage, then you would have your street address on that road. You get into tricky situations with, if we just call it abutters, and say you've got a street that has two addresses on there, but on each corner you had an owner who had, again, it was an abutter, and actually you could have frontage on two streets, but each of those four owners could be on separate streets. In that case, they could veto over the actual residents of that street. So I don't know if that makes sense. So
It
So-
does, but I was thinking more where if somebody went door to door and just had the people who live there sign, does a notarized letter also go, or a certified mail also go to the person who owns the property, not just the person or the people who reside on the property?
well, then you get into a situation where what if you have a large apartment building on there?
Yep.
They're all they're all renting from the owner.
Mm-hmm.
Should they have any say in what the owner of that building on that street wants to do?
I would say yes, because it's their license and passport and all their documents and their everything that has to get changed as well.
Yeah, but if they're renting, they may have to change at the end of their term of lease anyways. So,
Yeah,
to them, it potentially is no big deal because they've potentially done that many times already.
Right.
I also think that for the purposes of clarity in terms of who is eligible and who is not, property owner is something that can be validated, where getting an accurate list of tenants may be more transient in nature and may be more difficult to actually pin down from a logistical perspective.
so do we want to remove abutters from this and say property owners?
Something to the effect of property owners having frontage on road or on way.
Yeah.
Yeah, or we could say physical, something like, not physical, but like official mailing address is located on said way. If we weren't comfortable with the situation that Matt proposed of, right, being on, having frontage, but not officially being on
Residing.
that way. Yeah, exactly. I'm not, I don't have a strong sway either way. I just thought we should have, there's an either or there, I feel like.
Agreed. Back to the 10, the number 10. I know there was in the research that came up. Can't remember which town or city, I think, but I like that as a nice round number. But I also think 100% for 10 or less. More than 10, if it does go to that 2/3 or however we want to do a majority or super majority. Do we want to discuss and agree on a number and a percentage more than that number right now?
Well, let's see. So
well, let me rephrase that too, meaning we're going to agree on this, but
Mhm.
at some point when we recommend this, are we going to hold a public hearing? Are we required to hold a public hearing to receive public input before this goes, so we can build a consensus before it goes to town meeting?
Well, there'll be no public hearing
Okay,
until it's accepted by the town
town
council
council, right?
for submission in the warrant. We can have forums on it. We could have forums on it, but I don't know if to have a public hearing on it, we'd have to post that, we'd have to pay for it.
Okay.
I think, I don't think we want to get into that. We basically want to propose something, garner some public input, maybe say we're gonna have a forum on it. No one will come. We'll go to town council, they'll put it to us, we'll have a public hearing, no one will come. We'll go to town meeting and it'll be discussed for 3 nights. So,
Love your optimism, Matt.
thank you. Wait till you hear my items not anticipated by the new chair, so.
Fantastic.
So, but I'm just thinking different thresholds for 10, less than 10 property owners. You know, trying to get 100% of 2 people to agree on something sometimes is difficult. So maybe not 100% of, I think there still should be something less than 100%, because there's potentially always going to be one person who has a grievance, and if the super majority of people really want this, we don't want one person to hold up everything. That's my feeling on that, because
I agree.
just the culture we're in nowadays, no one's going to agree on everything. So,
Well, does that number, if it was stages where if it was 3 or 5 at 100% and then 10 at a certain, do we stage it in that way where if there's 3 to 5 people that live on this way, does that change your opinion, Megan or Matt or anybody else, on the percentage of signatures
I think
required?
it just makes it more confusing.
Okay,
I think that it's either you have it at one threshold that's 100% and for that threshold and less, or you make it whatever the number, call it 75 or 2/3 for everything. It's kind of a either or, but I think doing like more than one graduated is, to Megan's point, going to just get
Yeah.
far more confusing than it's worth.
right. And I could see both sides of this. I really would feel for that person who would have to change all of their identification and everything else. Is it part of the responsibility of our board to put together a general list of what we think would need to be changed? So when somebody's writing their signature on this piece of paper, they have a good idea of what they're responsible for, as opposed to, here, can you just sign this? We're looking at changing the name of this way to memorialize this person. Oh, that's such a great idea. I'll sign that.
Yeah.
I'm really worried about that part.
I bet there's like some sort of like state or federal like link that would tell you everything that, if your address changes, everything that you need to change. So
Mhm.
we could, instead of just having us trying to spell it all out, we could just provide the link or like, type out the link.
I'm just doing a quick search. Yep.
but again, renters move all the time.
Right.
They have to deal with this, so it's not like it's the end of the world. It's
Right.
just.
I have a
procedures.
checklist from my 20s when I moved a bunch.
I think we all agree with Bill that we want, like, the more information you put on this form and the more information you require the petitioner to give to the property owners, the the more straightforward it is. So, I mean, and the list would be, including but not limited to, and then as detailed as we can make it. I mean, I'm kind of with, I'm certainly with Megan that, the more you parse it out, the more confusing it gets. Do you want to say, 8 out of 10? Which is similar to 75%. I mean, so there's,
I mean, we could just say greater than 75% for, like, if we wanted to give like a flat, right? So then if you have 10, you have to have 8 because you have to have greater than 75 and there's not a half a person, so.
Right.
Or a half a household or whatever.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you've got three property owners on the street and you've got a 75% threshold, it's either 100% or it doesn't work.
yeah. Right.
So,
Oh, those math.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I like that, Megan. That, and
Yeah.
Theo, as far as like if there is a percentage that we use, right. Yeah.
All right. I like Megan's suggestion. Jim, how do you feel?
I'm in conceptual agreement. I think if you make it greater than 75%, you make it apply to all situations. I think that's the easiest, clearest way to go.
Yeah. All right. Bravo. Thank you, Megan.
No problem.
All right.
I think proof requirements for notification of abutters. I can't even remember what that means. Is that more getting into whether it's certified mail, how the signatures are actually more going to what the form is?
Yeah, right. Because I mean, they have to go to the clerk to get the list of everybody, and then they have to mail it. Isn't right. The proof is the sufficient number of property owners agreeing to it. Right.
Right.
So, and for clarity, when it's 10 or less, it's greater than 75%. If it's greater than 10, it's 75% or more.
Well, I'll defer to Megan on what she meant, but I thought it was just 75 and that was it. There was no number involved anymore.
Correct. That's what I was saying.
Okay.
Greater than 75% for any and all sizes.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm with you, Bill. I don't know what we were. I don't know what.
Yeah, I
I
can't
don't know what that was
remember.
referencing.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it does go back to, does it have to be certified mail? So the clerk says, yes, here you'll find all the property owners' addresses. It's your responsibility to send certified mail to each of them. Or is it knock on their doors, get their signature with this form, making sure they read and check that they read the, I think of like when you go and give blood, like read all the.
Would we give an either or, like, I didn't say this, but I know this is being recorded. God forbid we have some sort of new pandemic that shows up, right? And you can't knock on people's doors and get signatures. Just in the off chance,
Right.
and let's just like delete me saying that.
Mhm. No, it's good.
I assumed it was the same process that someone who's filing a definitive subdivision plan would have to follow to notify.
Right.
Um, The,
So are we looking at it is certified mail or in person?
um, I thought there were two different things. One, there's the notice that gets sent. And then the second is the signature.
Well, I think we did discuss that, but if I remember correctly, we wanted it to be on the same form. That way,
Yeah.
if someone is signing it, they can read the top part that does have this information to understand possible changes to personal identification.
Mhm.
I can't remember, Jim, I think that was you that might have recognized that as like having the form, but also having it as part of the form.
Yeah, I think that if you have it as part of the form, that's fine.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Okay. What's left on this number 2 application process? We've looked at the citizen petition, majority of property owner signature. We're getting rid of that part. We're looking at it as I don't think we need proof requirements for notification of abutters. That's the one we couldn't understand anymore, or couldn't remember what it was part of. So we're looking at this as greater than 75% property owners agreeing, right across the board. The next part would be, what are those signatures like? How are those signatures captured? Is that part? And we understand this, property owners on way, that's fine. What is written on the letter to inform the public? So this is all about that form. So I think we'll get to that. I don't even know if that needs to be there.
Mhm.
But if this is that first box, helping us understand its signatures will either be by certified mail or in person. Is that both are acceptable?
Mhm.
Well, all right. Who's gonna send out the certified mail? That would be the applicant would have to do that?
Yep.
Okay.
I think all of this under the application is the responsibility of the applicant.
Okay. I'm just thinking, so if people just sign a petition with their name,
Mhm.
and for some reason, let's say someone's signature was forged or, or something, it would seem like before there was a public hearing, a certified letter would be sent to each of these residents stating that this is happening.
Well,
And that would be their time to say, wait a second, I never signed that.
mhm.
So I'm just
Well-
looking for another check and balance there.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's what the town clerk would do, is verify each signature.
How are they gonna do that?
Well, they do it when we get our signatures for the election to run nomination papers. I was called out on a few of them that they couldn't read or they verified or stuff like that. I don't know if the town clerk goes through each nomination paper, each signature. It seems like this would be a much smaller list for them to verify.
Well, for one thing, the nomination list is a registered voter.
Mhm.
A budding property owner or someone on that lives on it might not necessarily be registered, so the town
Good
clerk
point.
would not have any information on them.
Good point.
Didn't Aaron say that Katie in the engineering department might have that information, like who the property owners are? I don't know.
Right. As much as Susan has that information from the bill that go out, I mean, it's again, it's like if they are the property owner but not living there or not a resident, do they have that information? I don't know.
Mhm.
Well, we could put a note in there on the application form that the town clerk needs to verify each signature. Maybe the form has the signature and phone number on there for contact. Or
Well,
address, if it's not the current address on the way, that their address can be put in there.
well, now we're again giving the town clerk more work to do, so we got to be careful of that.
Yeah, I understand that, Matt, but how many street name changes are coming up and how many people are going to be on these streets to do this? How often will this come up? I think it's important for someone to verify this that's on town payroll.
Well,
All
and
right,
that's,
well, we should just make sure we clear it with whomever we're designating to do potential work. All
Right.
I know is anyone gets thrown more work,
Yeah.
they may not enjoy it, so.
Fair enough. And maybe that was Erin's comment about Katie in engineering, that this was something that she'd be able to do because of the checks and balances on that side of it. And forgive me if it's in engineering or DPW, I can't remember.
yeah, it was a scribble on my
Mhm.
notes. But that's why, I mean, that's why we're also talking about, I mean, there's got to be some fee that relates to the clerk's work, and then there would be additional fees that relate to the, other departments' review of this too.
Well, that's next on our list. We talked about
Yeah.
including a site plan, but underneath that, filing fee, not street sign change fee. That's a DPW different thing that we discussed, would be a different type of fee.
Yeah,
But here are the examples of fees from other towns and cities. And, right from 0 to 3,849. So
yeah.
those were examples. I think the fee to me is somewhat arbitrary. Do we just pick a number? Is it, a filing fee? And that's something maybe we do get input from the town clerk's office.
Yeah.
In my mind, that's a low priority in terms of the decisions we need to make.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, is there anything that I'm missing under a complete application form? Signatures by certified mail or in person, greater than 75% property owners agreeing. Or agreeing is such a weird word. If anybody wants to, we can word.
Acknowledging.
Yeah, but it's
Approving.
signing, I guess. Maybe it's the act of. I don't know. Include site plan. Do we want to be more specific? Somebody just doing a screenshot of a Google map? Do we want to be more specific?
I don't know if we need to include a plan at all. You could
Yeah.
do a butters screenshot or
Mhm.
print the GIS plan, so.
Right.
Which the town clerk's probably gonna do anyways to make sure you captured all the addresses.
Right, if someone is trying to beat the system, and yeah, I got all four of them, and there's another house, like you mentioned, Matt, sitting on the corner, which has a dual address or whatever it might be, that they did not recognize either on purpose or not. So yeah, I don't mind getting rid of include site plan. Do we want to replace that with the application form needs to state how many property owners are on the street, or how many addresses are on that street, or list the addresses? Is there some way of making sure that when the town clerk looks at this application, that they do have all the addresses? And then when we have that in front of us, we know that we have all of the properties. So we can figure out what 75% is.
I would just say have them pull a certified abutters list on the street. I mean, I think that's the cleanest way to do it.
Well, we also have the issue that I kind of brought up earlier, is there are some streets that are basically cut off from one another.
Right.
So I know one of them is Wynn Street up off of North Ave that goes to Elm Street. There used to be a railroad bridge there. It's just a
Yep.
pedestrian bridge now. So say one side of that street wanted to be renumbered or renamed so that people knew, you know, which way to come in order to get to that street. So, and I've actually had that happen when I've gone to that street and started from the wrong direction. There's also Spring Street in Greenwood that is on two separate sides of the railroad tracks. So we may need to have some procedure that there's 100%, you know, the 75% of all the people on the entire section of that street need to approve, or is it just a section of street?
I would advocate it's only the people who are on the part of the way that's intended to be renamed.
All right, then we need to somehow put that out there. So
Yeah.
Okay, so site plan is out. We could start there.
Yeah.
And this is more for list of, I guess it's provide list of, again, do we want to go with the butters or property owners? What do we want to?
Yeah, property owners, right?
how about residents of said street?
Oh, then you get into it again where it could be an apartment, somebody who just lives there in an apartment, and then the property owner isn't alerted.
All right, property owners of said street.
Are we going with way or street? Because street. Yeah. I just want to get the verbiage correct and consistent.
It sounds like way is the right term.
Well, back to this.
Yep.
It's public way or private way,
Mhm.
not the highway, huh? Provide list of property owners on way.
Yep.
Okay. And Jim, to your point, does that cover your, is it the only the, to Matt as well, is it the only affected, or is it?
Only the portion of the way that's impacted by the proposed change.
I'm sorry, I missed the very last part. Impacted by,
The proposed change.
okay. I'm gonna skip the. Okay. I think that deserves a comma. Okay,
Well, we've provide list of property owners on way, but we still need to put in that have residential addresses, or, because again, property owners on way, you could have a small, 10-foot wide strip. It doesn't mean you have frontage on there, or your address is not on there.
But are they impacted by the proposed change? So they wouldn't be impacted if their address doesn't reside on that way.
All right, so impacted means a residential street number.
Right, they would have to change their personal identification, I guess.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So are we, let's see, and I don't know if we want to think of like what order do these go in, but I feel like that sits really close to the top, and signatures by certified mail or in person. Next on that list would be greater than 75% property owner signing, and then the filing fee, not street. This looks like it's starting to be in more the order that we need it to be in. Up for discussion.
Looks good to me.
Yep. Agreed.
The filing fee, I suggest we pass on that,
Mhm.
and input from town clerk required. Sent to planning department, economic, I don't know what I was thinking there. We don't have a planning department. Planning board / economic development to, and we know the full title of that, to publish notifications, cost added to fee. Should we just remove this?
Well, someone's got to run, pull the ad and run it.
Well, is that part of the application form though?
No, it's, yeah, they've got to pay for us to run the ad.
Right, so does this become more of a note?
Mhm. Yeah,
So let's figure this whole publish notification, cost added to fee is kind of somewhere in here. So it's together.
Yeah.
So that one doesn't really exist,
right. Yeah.
right?
And then under the public process, that's when we publish the notice.
Right. Right, this feels like it's taken an awful long time for us to get through this.
Well-
And I know it's important, and we've been not really making way on this. How do we want to go about this for the evening? Are we going in the right direction with how we're proceeding right now?
Do you think there's much more to do? Because then I feel like we could use this as the organization for the form. And maybe we can mark that up separately, and then next time go over the form as a sort of a final thing. Like,
Okay. Do we want to look at, is there anything else in here we want to tweak, meaning decide on timeline after initial application? Do we want to remove number 4 altogether. Now that we know about general law, chapter 85.
We can leave that in there
Yeah,
because it's just, it's going to go back to the town council. So
Right. I'm just thinking that somehow moves up to the application process. The application goes, I mean, is that the end of the application process? Once the application is approved and filled out and the town clerk says, yes, it's good, stamps it, dates it, that goes directly to town council, correct?
right. Well, I mean, right, it comes to us for the public hearing, as the designee, right?
But correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't they have to go to town council first before it comes to us as a public hearing?
yeah, the application would have to go to the town council for them to request a public hearing. We would be the public hearing authority, we'd hear it and then report back to them with our findings. And then they would decide, they would decree that.
I mean, if I'm typing this incorrectly, let me know. It's more that's what happens, I believe.
So I didn't understand that. I thought since we're either in concept or in truth, we're the designee of the town council. So shouldn't we be having the public hearing first and then sending it to the town council for final? I guess maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Yeah, and I'm not sure either because we have so many different, it's not a subdivision. We don't have to go by that. It's not a bylaw change. We don't have to follow those rules. So I think we can actually set how we want it to go as a process based on the research that we've collected and combined with chapter 85, section 3.3a and b. Because if it goes to the town council, then they say, oh, this is a public way. Mr. Mullen, what should we do? Oh, it's a private way. Okay, right to the planning board. Or they at least have that that meeting agenda and decision. And then they would forward, probably either way, they would forward it to our board for us to set the public hearing.
Well, once it's a bylaw, they have to follow that bylaw. And if it says what the procedure is, they've got to follow the procedure.
Understood. So, but we're trying to figure out what that procedure is as far as the application now has gone through the town clerk, it's stamped and dated. Where does it go from there? I think it goes to town council for review, and then the town council decides to forward it to the planning board for public hearing or not.
Yeah, so let's say 100% of owners on the street got together and decided that they wanted some offensive name.
Can you give an example, Matt?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
At that point, they can just choose not to, they can end the process there.
Right.
Whereas someone wanted to have a public hearing and bring this up and discuss it, if it comes right to us and we have to have a public hearing, it could lead to a fiasco.
I agree.
That
So-
makes sense.
This way, it basically gives the town council the right of first refusal to say, no, we don't want this.
Yep.
Or try something different.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. In the same manner, sorry to interrupt, but in the same manner that the fire chief says no right away. We also
Correct.
have this as another chance to say no. This
Yeah.
isn't right. Yeah, okay.
And then once it came to us, if it passed the town council once and they were fine with it and they came to us and then we heard from a whole bunch of people that said, no, this whatever name is offensive for whatever reason, then we could say, okay, we don't recommend it, and then goes back to the town council.
Yes.
And I don't know if just because the planning board doesn't recommend it, doesn't mean that they can't go forward with it anyways.
Okay.
Well, we're just trying to put some, I think, some checks and balances in here to make sure that, you know, we don't have one board that potentially is skewed a certain way and a bunch of people skewed that way, that something could get sailed through. I'm just thinking, you know,
Yep.
worst case scenario for something.
Well, I know, Megan, you seem to be really good at simplifying and cutting the stuff out that's not needed. Does
Yeah.
number 2 in those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points there seem to cover the application form?
I think so. I'm happy to kind of move down to I don't know what we mean by decide on timeline after initial application. But what we just discussed in that process, that sounds, to me, that sounds good.
Okay. Can we move on to the public process? 3, maybe 4?
Definitely.
Yep.
Okay. So again, we got down to 4 and I'm like, I don't feel like that belongs anymore because I feel like it belongs here now that we're learning more about this. So decide on timeline after initial application. I feel like this gets into that once it is past, well, that next level of approval after the application process to the town council review. I almost feel like this becomes maybe number 3. And then we figure out like it seems like everything that we have that goes in front of the board has some specific timeline, like 21 days. There's some type of, the board has to act on it, or it requires this many public hearings. What do we want to do as a board? Obviously, we need the 2 weeks minimum notice. That's part of our the laws, Massachusetts laws. Do we
I guess-
have this caveat where if all owners consent, then a public hearing is not required? Is there any reason that? I mean, that came in as a comment from someone.
I mean, I guess if we have the check and balance already from town council, that they've already reviewed it in case it is inappropriate, then my assessment would say if all the owners consent and town council and the fire chief have both said this name seems fine and appropriate, I say no public hearing necessary.
I like the simplification of that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we're missing as a board that the public needs to, if we hold a public hearing, what are we looking to get in this public hearing? Are we looking to hear somebody from across town saying they don't like the name of the street and they disagree with it? Of course, we don't have to go by that. We're just looking for input. Does it come down to the planning board is making that final decision on that private way, or the town council has pushed their approval for a public way as well to us?
Yeah. I think we've got it. I think we have to give ourselves at least 4 weeks so that we can have it discussed in a meeting and make that determination. If if all the property owners agree to it and the town council's approved it, then we would say no public hearing, done. And then
Right.
Otherwise, you then have to publish.
I really like that.
Megan wins. She should be chair.
Well, if I was going to nominate her for vice chair, but that was more of a retention tool in my own personal life, knowing that Megan's term is up in the spring of 23.
We can have a coup.
Right. Megan, I said that out loud on purpose.
I love it. It's being recorded. I do like your point, Bill, about
Mhm.
like what is the point, right? Like someone
Yeah.
across town, right? Like go,
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I feel it's just like a waste of town money and funds and board's time.
Yeah.
So, but it should be, the next, well, so what is the so town council meets the day before us. So if they approve it, we've got to wait a meeting cycle to get it on the agenda, right?
Correct. If we do have a public hearing, we need to have that 2 weeks minimum notice of scheduled public hearing and right.
No, I thought we had to have a meeting cycle
Yep.
to get it onto our agenda, where we would then determine
Yes.
that you need to have a public hearing.
Correct.
But-
And would not have time to get on our agenda because we need to have I don't know, Susan, is it 3 days? 3 business days?
Well, you need to set a public hearing at a meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and then if you're setting a public hearing and you need to put it in the paper noticed, you really can't do it for the next meeting because you would have had to have published it in the paper that night
Correct.
or before the meeting.
Right.
So it almost guarantees it's going to be the third meeting from then. is
Right.
The earliest you can have the public hearing.
Okay. And we understand the public process and what we have to go by. So if, however, the meetings align or don't align with town council, we know we have to get it on our agenda after town council reviews and forwards to the planning board for public hearing. Once it's on our agenda at that meeting, we can then vote to schedule the public hearing and pick the dates and get all the notices prepared and sent out.
Mhm.
So according to Mass General Law, Chapter 85, Section 3, it says a public hearing shall be given by said department. So I don't think you can just say if the fire chief approves it and 100% of the abutters approve it and the town council approves it, it's a done deal.
Okay.
A public hearing shall be given. So you have to have a public hearing.
Mhm.
So
And-
what's this? The public board may also, after a public hearing,
This is, again, and this is summarized by
okay,
town. I'm looking at the actual law itself.
okay. Thanks. I didn't look any deeper than the notes.
All right.
Okay,
So you can take out the question mark. Requires public hearing.
that was almost real time. Okay. Okay, so,
So timeline, it is what it is. I
Yep.
wouldn't sweat that.
right. Okay, so we understand this part.
Yep.
So planning. I think
Mhm.
that's enough.
Yep.
No. Come on, fingers, keep working. Just another hour. Okay.
Did
So
you
I
say it
almost
another
feel.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I almost feel that this part is just number 3 now.
Mhm. Yeah, and you're deleting row 36, right? There you go.
Yep,
You're now 35.
right. So if all property owners sign and consent, that's the one that goes away.
Yep.
Because we can't do that.
Right.
Even if we put it in our bylaws.
Right.
It's a point of order. Okay.
So for 35, our part of the public hearing is we will decide if it's a public or private way. And if it's a private way, we can vote to accept it. If it's a public way, then it goes to 4.
Maybe or I think town council reviews and forwards to the planning board for public hearing. And at that moment, I mean, I imagine they have the power to put that decision-making in our hands.
Okay.
That's come up in the past with something I remember from one of the previous town council meetings on a matter where Mr. Mullen did mention that, and I'd have to go back and see. This was like maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Anyway, yep. So do we want some type of note on number 35 about that? It almost seems like this hits in here, public way.
Why not the town council? We send it back to town council, because again, there's going to be a process of ordering departments to spend money, even if it's a private way, to put a sign or do whatever. So the town council has the resources to dictate departments spend money. We don't.
Agreed.
Okay.
Is this reading how we want it to?
Mhm.
Okay. No more colors. I like colors, but not now. Okay.
So number 4 is town council approves and allocates funding for change. And then 5 is execution of change.
So does that fall under execution of change, Theo? That town council, once this decision's made, it just goes to execution of change, and it is what you're saying part of the decision?
Matt, when the town council first agrees not to refuse it, it comes to the public hearing process. They're not consenting to pay for any changes at that point.
No, they're not gonna, I don't think they're gonna pay for anything.
Right. So I think you do need a separate 4, which is the town council decides to pay for the change, and then 4 is the departments, or 5 would be the departments execute the change.
Okay. Just so getting this, what do we want to, what is number 4? It's a signing of?
I think it's town council authorizes town funds to pay for street name changes.
I mean, if it goes to the town council initially, they're gonna refer to it to the planning board as a pro forma. We're gonna hold a public hearing and send it to all the other boards for their
Right.
input. We hold a public hearing, we vote favorable or disfavorable action, we refer it back to town council so they can actually consider the matter with the information that's collated by the planning board and the and any other feedback coming from the public, right? So after the town council votes to approve or disapprove it, then either the appropriate boards or departments in town will be directed to implement the change, or they won't, right?
Yep.
I mean, just thinking, I just want to make sure, this sometimes helps me think.
Mhm.
When I think of departments, I think of police, fire, DPW, engineering.
I mean, it's ZBA. I mean, from Jim's original list, you had the utilities,
Right,
assessors off.
But when the town council forwards that to us, we'll probably send some sort of correspondence similar to what the ZBA sends to us all the time.
mhm,
Oh, right,
All
right,
the
right.
different parties
yeah,
requesting input in advance of our next meeting, or whenever in advance of our public hearing. So then at our public hearing, we'll have a letter from
Yeah.
police or a letter from engineering, you know what I mean? And all that information gets collated as part of the public hearing process.
okay,
Yeah, all right.
Well, I don't think we should put in town council authorizes funds and notifies departments. The town council through the town manager can facilitate, the execution of that. And if if there's any cost, the applicant will pay for that.
Mhm.
So if it's a small street and there's 2 street signs, then it potentially is going to be one cost. If it's a long street and multiple intersections where you need more signs, it's going to cost something more. So they'll figure that out. But if we put in there, town council authorizes funds, people are going to say, in another part of town, I don't want to pay any money for them to change their street name. So
point.
we need to word this that,
Yep.
We're not telling the town, you got to pay for this. We're saying, work it out, and any costs associated will be, the applicant's responsibility.
well,
Got it.
are there hidden costs that to update the police and fire databases, DPW, this additional work for the town, DPW maps and whatever else, and utilities database changes? Is that a factor?
There might be, but I think Matt's point is that it's not like we're referring this to the town council and saying, this is
Mhm.
gonna cost 20 grand.
Right,
We're referring to it and we're saying, we views this as either favorable or an unfavorable action should be taken. The town council will say, we agree that the street change should be changed or not. And then to Matt's point, through the town administrator, they can adjudicate, the next steps and the allocation of funds if required. But there's not like a
Right.
specific authorization that's being denoted by our board to the town council.
so what is number 4 then?
Basically, the town council would say, after the public, because I'm guessing that the application is going to come to the town council, they're going to send it to us, we'll have the public hearing, and then we'll refer it back to them, and then they'll basically say either they agree or disagree with us. Like, we can recommend something for favorable action, and they have the right to say, no, thank you.
Mhm.
Unless people disagree, but I think that's kind of, because we have to have a public hearing, and town council's basically, in this process we've laid out, they're farming the public hearing component to us.
Right,
Right. So they, right. And if they accept the decision, then on row 40, you would say town authorizes town administrator to proceed.
What, yeah.
Yeah.
If it's accepted.
Yeah.
What's the town council, what do we want the town council to do at that point?
They're going to instruct the administrator to proceed with the name change.
And we mean Steve Mayo when we say this, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right.
If it's declined,
I mean, they're the authority having jurisdiction, so if it's declined, it's declined. And
right,
then
Yeah.
I believe per the Mass General Law, they've got 30 days to appeal.
Mhm.
the applicant has, are we sure about 30 days? Is that,
I think you can say, right, there you go.
not questioning your knowledge, Jim?
Mhm.
Yeah, that was what I was reading from the Mass General Law chapter. I can't remember what chapter it was, but the one that Aaron was sent over. I can go double check it.
Yeah, 85.
Yeah, but I think that might be if the board itself does a name change. I don't know if that would apply to if you have a bylaw or procedure that's followed.
Okay,
So,
We'll need to double check that. So I think this may say if the town council decides just to change the name of a street and doesn't talk to anyone about it, at that point, there's recourse for
Mhm.
aggrieved parties to appeal it.
right.
But
Okay.
again, it's speculation on my part on that.
all right.
And you know, I don't think the applicant can, can appeal it. He had a process that went through, it didn't go through. That's it.
Right, all right, so let's, this is an item that I think we can research and figure out outside of this meeting and come back to the group. And I think separately, we can also take this process flow and work that into the form.
Sure.
So we don't really have to get the form totally right, because this is all.
Mhm. This is the
uh,
work behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, and becomes the sort of the spine for the bylaw change. So I think. So it is 8:32. Obviously, we're going to come back to this next week. Does anybody have any advice on the next steps?
Well, since I've been kind of the clerk side of this, what I'll do is at the end of this meeting, I'll share this Excel spreadsheet with everybody.
Mhm.
And I'll put, look at the date that we, oh my gosh. Sorry. Is today 24th, 25th, right?
4.
Oh, it's 24th. Look at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So,
Yeah, forgive any typos I have in here, but I think we're really close. We have the criteria and our references and all that information that we've gone through. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 steps, including some notes from the town council. And I am going to read that 85, just to make sure I understand. But Theo, is it the right next step to share this with the board? And that way the board can review, and if there's any comments or updates, we either discuss in our next session, or do we want to, any comments that people have individually, they can send to me and I could add them to this so we're better prepared?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Let's send individual comments to you.
Okay.
Are we at the point where someone can start taking a stab at actually writing the proposed bylaw change?
Yes.
I think that I would advocate that we're kind of at the point where
Yeah.
we've beaten this document up enough that we probably need to start going towards a bylaw change, and then get it to the point where we can actually send it to like Tom Mullen for
Yeah.
his review. And
Is that doable before the next meeting?
Time-wise, I would say not likely.
Yeah.
could we
May-
potentially just table this for next meeting?
Yep.
Try to sit down and get a bylaw, and then have something that we can respond to, and then not have this suck up time for next
Yep.
meeting.
Yeah, I was, so we'll discuss this not June 14th, but June 28th. All right. Okay.
Sorry, thinking, working.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it, that was really helpful, and I know it took a while, but I think, yeah, we will be able to have a good draft by June 28th. And Bill, I guess you and I will work on the draft. Or does anybody else want to work on the draft? Okay. All right. All right. Item 5, review of subdivision rules and regulations.
How much time you want to spend on this?
I would be comfortable coming back to it next meeting, unless, do you want to give ourselves, like, how much time do you think we need?
You could spend hours on this, truthfully.
Yeah.
So I've gone through and done a rough cut, but we may want to dedicate a little bit of time and kind of quickly go through, maybe a third of it per meeting, and just tick through and see what stuff on there needs to come off, what needs to be added to, stuff like that. There are some things in here that no one complies with, and they don't ask for waivers for, so and we've never asked for it, so we may want to remove some of that other stuff. I want to add some stuff into it, but yeah, we should. It's something sort of like this, is once you get into it, there'll be a lot of discussion, so we should be prepared to just spend a little bit of time on each section and go through it.
Okay. All right.
Matt, would it be easier to like section out the document and say, okay, we're gonna tackle this third, and then send out the third in advance for the group to review and put comments on, and then we can come with questions and be prepared to kind of tackle that third for the next meeting agenda? And then that way we kind of have a plan in place and a process in place. Okay, and then the next meeting we're going to tackle the second, third, the next 3rd and then review and make comments, and then next meeting, right, we're prepared and ready to go to have that discussion. I don't, just
Yeah, we could
proposing that.
do that, or I could send you what I have marked up so far and you can go through and make your own edits, and then we can discuss it as we go through it and see how far we get into it.
Okay.
There's some things that need to be, moved around a little bit. So saying that we're gonna, for me saying we're gonna just handle the first third, there may be something that in the back part we need to pull forward and vice versa. So one thing I want to try to write in is that and I'm trying to figure out where to put it in this whole document, because it's as you go reading it, it doesn't, some stuff just doesn't make sense the way the order is in here. But I want to make sure that any project that has a zoning or a conservation commission component in it, that it runs simultaneously. So the decisions are one document, not that one board handles it, it goes to the next board. And by the time it's done, it's all chopped up. So, and this is sort of the procedure that we've been doing for the last few years, is making sure that, and for the most part, most applicants follow that procedure. The last project, for some reason, they did not follow that, and it extended a lot longer than it should have, whereas if it was simultaneous, it probably would have ended before Christmas. So,
Yeah.
But that's, that was their decision to proceed that way. So what I'll do is I'll send this out and people can look at it, see what I have marked up so far. I've got some stuff highlighted that are questions we need to decide, and other stuff I've just made the edits. So
All right.
I'll redline them. So,
All right.
all right, good. I'll send that out.
Do you feel like there's all right, that's great. That sounds good. So we'll come back to that next meeting. All right, item 6, items not anticipated by the chair.
Like being chair.
Yeah. That's very good. So does anybody have any discussion items?
Well, Erin sent out that next Tuesday, the 31st, is going to be a bike and pedestrian plan meeting. So anyone that's interested in doing that should from the board attend, or anyone listening after the fact on this tape, they should, if they're interested in that, they should seek out the link for that.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I was going to say is at town meeting, we had the 2 zoning changes. One of them for the zone change up in Albion Street passed. The other one for repeal of the wetlands item failed. And I know, Jim, you gave a good argument. You said a lot of things I was ready to go up and say. I was really disappointed, truthfully, that seeing so many town council members vote against it. I can't for the life of me understand why they would want to have a poorly written item in our zoning that forces people to go to the board, to the ZBA, and then they ultimately decide that they're not going to act on it because of whatever the Conservation Commission says. Conservation Commission was at the meeting and said it doesn't make sense. It should be repealed. Yet, so for that recommendation from 2 boards, certain town council members decided to keep it, and I am going to talk to some of them to see what their rationale was on that, because if they had reasons to not vote along with the work that we put in, they should have been vocal about it. So I think they really need to answer to why they want to have a flawed zoning item on our books. So,
Matt, to your point, I believe on record, it was only missed by one vote.
yeah, it was that close. So, and one of the arguments was, oh, we should review this some more. It's like, well, we kind of did.
Right.
But the people that were saying this did not bother to show up at the process. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
but
Is there, so there's a cooling off period before this can come back before town meeting, right?
well,
that a two-
someone again would have to propose it to
Right.
repeal it again.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
there's also the $50,000 that was allocated to review the zoning bylaws.
Okay, right. All right,
Yeah.
well, that's potential. Okay.
so of that $50,000, they're going to spend some of this on something that we've already done.
Mhm.
So, which is kind of asinine, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
Are you referring to the master plan, or what other document, or what have we already done that would tap into that $50,000 that's been approved?
No, I'm just saying they're going to spend some time looking at this zoning article to see if it's worthy of staying or not,
Mhm.
when it might, it would have basically already been taken care of.
Understood. Sorry, I misunderstood what you said. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that, is that part of the allocation for the comprehensive zoning bylaw review? That's, I didn't, so,
Yeah, they're going to go
Yeah.
item by item to see if, how it's worded, if something needs to be changed, and then they'll make recommendations that would have to probably have a public hearing and change. I don't know if just
Yeah.
because they want to repeal a zoning law because it might not make sense,
yeah,
what the process is, if it just goes to town meeting, or there needs to be the whole process.
okay,
It also isn't necessarily zoning per se. It's the overall town bylaw. So my understanding is that it can have different focuses depending on whatever committee is empowered
oh,
to
okay,
review those different items.
Well, the last zoning review focused on, or the last bylaw review specifically did not get into zoning because it was so complicated. So that's why with this one, they're actually hiring someone who's specialized in doing it,
Mhm.
because it is so specialized.
Okay. Yeah, all right, got it, okay. Does anybody else, so thank you very much for acknowledging all three of those things. Does anybody else have anything?
Oh, I do
Oh,
actually.
you still do, good, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have a couple of the duties you need to do. You need to appoint a,
Yes,
how do we do it? Kind of called it trying to get away from secretary to technical writer, and then person to budget approval person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the budget approval, I think, is the important one, as Susan needs to be paid and our other
Yeah.
things need to go out, and all that needs to happen. And I believe that person would sign those, correct, Matt?
Correct.
Okay.
yeah,
And that's appointed by the chair.
yeah, and that's, all right. All right, so we'll do that. I want to give a quick master planning update. Does anybody else have anything?
Now, Matt stole my March 31st, May 31st, obviously. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So Megan, you are the technical writer, editor. any fond remarks to encourage Bill or Matt?
No, if you feel so apt to appoint me again, go for it. But if someone else wants it, all the power to you.
All right, all right.
I think that's a ringing endorsement that Megan wants to keep it. So
Okay.
Yeah, that would be much appreciated. So, all right, thank you, Megan. And Matt, you've done so much work. We'll give you a pass, and Bill would appreciate you being the budget approval.
Sure, I'll
Right.
take on that responsibility.
All right, great. The only master planning note to make is we have our next advisory board meeting tomorrow. And we'll get a little bit of a review of the survey results, not much, based on the land use and conservation surveys. And we'll do the work for laying out the next public meeting and the next survey, and I'll be able to report back to y'all at the next meeting about those dates. So, that was the only item I had. Anyone else have anything else?
Theo, just from that perspective, that was the land use survey, right? That you're talking about?
Yeah.
And so I think I missed it. Did you say that you're gonna find out next time you guys have a meeting when we think that the preliminary results of that are gonna be? I think some of those inputs are gonna be important if we decide to start moving forward in terms of the overlay district for the MBTA communities.
Yes, I will find out all of that, and yeah, the additional process for the next meetings and then the next survey too. So they had some very preliminary survey results done, so I'm not sure when they'll have the results formally. So,
And the balance of the master plan, that deliverable, that full deliverable is Q1 of 23, right?
yes, that's right. I think we would like to, I'll circle back with Aaron about MBTA communities and the next steps with that, and we can give an update for the next meeting on that. All right. Any other notes, comments, thoughts?
I do have one.
Right.
I was recently asked by a town councilor what I thought of the board and a couple other questions about a town planner. And I quickly responded and I said, in my time of being on the board and observing the planning board, I feel like I am very happy and positive about all the members of this board and all that we can contribute. I feel like it's been a long time coming, but I feel like we are such in a solid place where we can really provide the town and the public with everything a planning board needs to, especially here in Wakefield with everything going on with housing and Envision Wakefield and a lot of the master plan. So I'm very excited and looking forward to future collaboration with other boards. And I really hope, and this was a next thing that came up, is I'd love for us to be back in town hall with a hybrid solution. I'm really looking forward to that type of environment and atmosphere. And with the board's permission, I'd like to send my quarterly message to the town administrator about what's the status on being back in town hall and having a hybrid solution like a Zoom room or whatever it might be, if that's okay with the board.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. That would be helpful to know.
Yep.
So,
The second part of that, the town planner, it seems to be a common question whenever I run into somebody in town that realizes, oh, you're on the planning board. What do you think about a town planner? And I am in agreement that we do need a town planner, maybe not at a full-time capacity, but as some type of help to our economic developer, Erin, who, as we know, does a tremendous job. But I feel like having a town planner or in that capacity, even if it's shared with another town, it would enable Erin to do the job she loves and have somebody that works as a peer to facilitate the planning board and other boards that need the planning person. And I don't know how other board members feel. Maybe we should try to be all on the same page about this, and we might have difference in opinions, but I think sometime soon our board should draft a memo letter to town council to I don't know, to whatever the board decides.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think a part-time town planner would be useful, mostly for the fact that Erin really didn't know a lot of what she was getting into when she
Yeah.
accepted the position, and it was kind of like thrown at her when she got there. So to be fair to her,
Mhm.
I think some help with that would be appropriate. I don't think we have enough going on in town to bulk up the town budget with another $120,000 whatever dollars it's
Yeah.
going to cost for salaries and benefits for a full-time town planner, because there's really not that much going on. But when things are going on, you need the expertise to fall back on.
Mhm.
So so yeah, I'd be willing to support someone in a town planner in a position, but I would not be in favor of a full-time town planner.
Okay.
Is that something that should go on our next meeting agenda? That as a board, we openly discuss this and have to draft? Is that the right procedure for that? I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds like, right, at a minimum, we'd have to discuss it. I don't know the process for actually like taking that to the town council or the administrator. So,
Someone can draft a letter and then we
Mhm.
can discuss it at our next meeting. And if we're all in favor with it, then it's all set. I don't think
Right.
we need to have an agenda item, but
Okay.
Okay.
someone wants to, you can write 3 different letters if you want, and we can approve one of them and all, come to a consensus and
Okay.
forward that on.
Yeah, that's not a process that requires like a public forum or anything
Right.
like that. So
Right.
you don't
Right.
need to put it on as a letterhead. With that being said, I think pretty much every sentiment Matt said, I'll concur.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I agree with all of you too. So. All right. So it could be a very short letter. Is that something, Bill, you're comfortable drafting?
Sure, and I could push that in front of our technical advisor, Megan
Yes.
Menasali, to make sure it's crafted.
All right. Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you. All right. If there's no other business, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
Second. All right. Wow.
Oh, was
All
that too
in-
quick?
Yeah, that was great. All in favor? I get, we have to do it backwards, right? Megan,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and myself, yes.
Theo, just because Matt does it backwards doesn't mean you have to.
Oh, okay. For the record, Matt does everything correctly, right?
Well, just, yeah.
No, I always just assume the person who made the motion is for it, but I can certainly prove you wrong at some point, so don't worry about it.
Well,
Have- Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a great
Yeah.
night, and thank you all
Bye.
very much.
Congratulations, Theo.
Well, you as well, Jim, and thank you, Matt, and thank you,
Thanks.
Bill, and well led. So, good night, everybody.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.